So, what can a top FBI hostage negotiator teach us about getting what we want in our everyday lives? Well, it turns out pretty much everything. But the lessons are absolutely not what you'd expect. Okay, let's dive into the core principles from former negotiator Chris Voss and his incredible book, Never Split the Difference. Right out of the gate, Voss hits you with a line that really makes you lean in. I mean, wow. It's funny, it's a little bit shocking, and it gets right to the heart of his whole philosophy. Negotiation is literally everywhere, and the skills that save lives can completely transform our daily interactions, from massive business deals to just figuring out what's for dinner. All right, so the first and biggest rule is right there in the title, and it's a direct challenge to what most of us have been taught our entire lives, that compromise, meeting in the middle, is always the best way to go. Voss says that's a terrible idea. I mean, just think about it for a second. In a truly high-stakes situation, splitting the difference isn't just lazy, it can be downright dangerous. It usually just leaves both sides feeling like they gave something up, and it's a way to avoid the hard work of actually figuring out what's really going on. In this right here just illustrates the point perfectly. When you lay it out like this, you realize how absurd the whole idea of meeting in the middle can be. You can't compromise on a life. So if splitting the difference is a no-go, what are you supposed to do instead? The answer, and really the cornerstone of Voss's entire method, is this thing he calls tactical empathy. Now, this isn't about being nice. It's not about feeling sorry for someone. It's a strategic tool. In fact, it's the weapon you use instead of compromise. Okay, let's break that down. It's about really understanding the world from their point of view, seeing what pressures they're under, what's motivating them, what they're feeling. And then, and this is the absolute key, you have to describe that understanding back to them. You're not judging it, you're not agreeing with it, you're just showing them you see it. And this is probably the number one thing people get wrong about this whole idea. You don't have to agree with a terrorist to understand why they feel like they're right. You don't have to like your boss's new policy to understand the pressure from above that made them do it. The goal is just to make the other person feel heard. That's it. It's that simple and that powerful. So why does this work so well? Why does just making someone feel heard completely change everything? Well, it's not some kind of Jedi mind trick. It's actually based on fundamental human biology. Every single one of us, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, has this thing called a limbic system in our brain. It's the part that runs on emotion and drives our decisions. Tactical empathy is so effective because it speaks directly to that universal human wiring, bypassing all our rational arguments and getting to the core of what really makes people tick. And this wiring, well, it reveals some really fascinating stuff. Think about it. When you're being totally honest, everything about you, your body language, your tone of voice, the words you choose, it all lines up and creates this consistent pattern. It's your baseline. But what happens when you lie? Suddenly, the story changes. You might get defensive, you might change the subject, you might start fidgeting. There are all these different ways dishonesty can leak out. So you see, there's this weird imbalance between truth and a lie. So here's the real kicker. Skilled negotiators aren't magic lie detectors. They're just masters of observation. They get a sense of a person's truth-telling baseline, and then they just watch. They watch for any little deviation from that pattern. That change, that tiny break in the rhythm, that's where the real information is hidden. All right, enough theory. Let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world, because this is where it gets really good. We're talking about everything from tense personal standoffs all the way up to matters of national security. Okay, picture this. You're at a bar, you go to take an empty seat, and the guy next to it leans in and says that to you. What do? Your gut instinct is probably screaming fight or flight, right? So what's the play? Do you puff out your chest and threaten him back? Do you argue that the seat is free? Or do you just walk away steaming mad? Voss did something completely different, something that shut the whole thing down in an instant. He just looked at the guy and said, "I'm Chris." That's it. That's all he did. By simply giving his name, he went from being a nameless target to being a person. And that tiny act of humanization completely disarmed the other guy's aggression. A potential fight just fizzled into a conversation. And if you think that's impressive, get this. The same basic principle, establishing a baseline and watching for the change, was used by Voss's colleagues in one of the most critical intelligence missions in modern history. So, after talking to a captive terrorist for long enough to get a feel for his normal, truthful way of speaking, agents showed him a photo of the man they suspected was the 9/11 mastermind. And the captive's response, it was just a slight change from his normal speech pattern. That was everything. He said, "It's Ramzi's uncle." And just like that, they had their man, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. I mean, these stories are absolutely incredible, right? But Voss is really clear on this point. The most powerful place to use this stuff isn't with terrorists or in bar fights, it's with the people we see every single day. One of Voss's clients used these techniques during a really tense family dinner. His sister, who was under a ton of stress, just laid into him for an hour straight. But instead of fighting back, he just listened. He just described her world back to her. He made her feel heard. And the results? He gets this email the very next day. Our relationship was healed, not because he won the argument, but because he offered understanding. So the huge lesson here is that these aren't just special skills for FBI agents. They are life skills. They are tools that can turn conflict into collaboration and your biggest adversaries into partners. So let's wrap this up with the big takeaways. First, forget about compromise. It's a lazy shortcut that helps no one. Instead, put all of your energy into understanding where the other person is coming from, and then prove it by describing their world back to them. Your number one goal isn't to get them to agree with you. It's to get them to look at you and say, "That's right." When you make someone feel truly heard, you change the entire game. And that really brings us to the final thought. This isn't just some interesting idea to think about. It's a tool you can start using the second this is over. So, ask yourself, who in your life, right now, at work, at home, wherever, who seems difficult? Who are you clashing with? Because maybe they're not actually trying to be difficult. Maybe they're just desperate to feel understood.